Hello, hello. So I'm going to show you how to create a fade. I'm going to go from yellow to orange to red this morning on this hat. So I'm going to start by putting some paint on my plate. This is gouache. Please pay attention to the amount that I'm putting. So it's not a huge amount, especially for a single hat. Just a small little dab. If you do a huge blob, you're potentially going to be wasting your paint. I'm going to do the three colors. I'm going to put them kind of next to each other on my plate, but I want to give a little bit of space in between each one. You can see there's some paint left over from a previous hat that I was painting. Set this aside for a second. Want to work on the hat now. So I've got a clean cup of water here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the brush to get the entire surface of the hat wet. So I start generally at the base here, and you can kind of see the water soaking in. I try not to get any on the brim. That's important. The brim has cardboard in it, and you don't want it to get wet very often. It can kind of ruin that material. So I'm just going to kind of work my way all the way across the surface. What this water is going to allow our paint to do is move in kind of an even way across the surface that we're going to be painting. So it's very much, even though we're using gouache, and many of you have heard me say it's very much like watercolor, the wet canvas is important. So I'm going to fade this from a yellow to orange to red up here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my, I just wet the brush. I'm going to bring that to the yellow paint. And what's really important is right now you can see I've got paint that hasn't been watered down on the brush. You want to make sure that you mix this paint until that little blob that's on the brush kind of mixes in with the water. Because what will happen is that little blob will get on your hat and you'll have just kind of a very bold yellow spot, and it won't be a nice even paint across the surface. I'm going to start, as I said, from the base. If you get gouache on the bill, it will show up, so you want to try not to touch that. So you can see I'm just barely touching the edge. And you can also see that the yellow starts to kind of fade up. This paint will continue to move on the surface of the hat well after you've kind of laid down your mark. So I'm just kind of drawing it up a little bit, so I'm starting to create that fade. And I'm going to just kind of do a little bit of, without adding more paint to my brush, I'm just going to kind of blend that yellow up. So I'm looking now to see, does the color look even across the surface? I feel like it kind of does. So now I'm going to move to my orange. If you want to, you can use the yellow that you've already got. These colors are going to mix together anyways. I'll bring a little bit more water to this. Again, I'm going to look at my brush, so there's a little blob of paint there that I want to mix in. If that blob exists on my brush, potentially it will be a spot on my hat that isn't nice and evenly faded. So I've got it all kind of mixed out on the brush. I've got it ready to go there. When I come back to my hat, instead of just starting the orange right where the yellow kind of ended, I'm going to move the orange up just a little bit. And the thinking here is that this is going to fade down into the yellow. The yellow is going to kind of fade up into it. So I'm giving it a little bit of space there. Again, I'm looking to see that my colors are kind of nice and even all the way across. And now, instead of getting more paint, I'm just going to use the little bit of paint that's on my brush to kind of blend this down. Now I'm kind of looking here and I see, kind of difficult to see for you, but it's a little bit bolder here and not as faded. So I'm just going to touch some of my paint and I'm just going to kind of go over that little area there. I might even bring, so just kind of had that orange, and I'm just going to bring that all the way down. And so you can see I've got a nice orange that fades down into my yellow. And so the last bit is going to be my red. Going to be the same process that we've already followed. So I'm going to bring a nice wet brush over to this red. I'm going to bring more water, and I'm just going to mix up that whole section. At this point, it's totally okay if your red and your orange merge. I'm looking here at my brush to see if there are any blobs of paint. I do see a blob, so I'm going to continue to kind of mix. There's another little blob there. You can see it on the corner. So I just want to mix until those blobs kind of disappear. All right, so I've got a lot of red paint on my brush. This time I'm going to start here at the top, and I'm going to work my way down to that orange. And I'm, again, being careful. If I just paint gouache on that little tab at the top, it will kind of turn a reddish black. So just working my way down. I'm watching to make sure that my color is even all the way across. And where the red touches the orange, I'm going to be a little more conscious of kind of fading these two. I don't want to come too far down because the red will overpower the orange and it'll basically make it disappear. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come back and I'm just going to touch the orange that's on my plate, even though the red started to overpower it. I'm going to bring that down. And now I'm going to water this brush. So I want to get most of the paint out of the brush. I don't want the brush to have too much water in it, so I'm knocking a lot of the water off. And now I'm just going to use just a wet brush to kind of blend these two spaces together. So the clean wet brush is what it's doing is it's continuing to bring the red down onto the orange, but because there's no paint on the brush, it's allowing that red to be very minimal. So it's not overpowering the orange. That's pretty much it. I'm looking again right now, just kind of this is an artistic decision, is just to look to see that the colors are all kind of blending evenly, and I'm pretty happy with that. So thanks for watching. Good luck with your work.